Hello, televiewers. Good evening and welcome to Prime Hour, the first for this week, today, Monday, June the 20th, 2022, where we are going to be looking back at the AGC, the Anglophone General Conference, a project that was so dear to the late Cardinal Tumi, Christian. He worked so hard for it to see the day of light, which never was, and he died until date. We've not heard persons with whom he worked tell us the way forward. We've not heard those who actually said it was the best move to initiate something similar to what is happening. We are saying that the AGC died with Christian Cardinal Tumi. Is going to be the first topic for tonight on Prime Hour. We also, if time permits, are going to be asking the question as to whether it's time for Cameroonians to start thinking reconciliation, forgiveness, as a way to heal this land that is plagued with so many crises, conflicts across the nation, with blood flowing, especially in the southwest and northwest regions. We are discussing this today with panelists who are in the house already. Dr. Ngwanyam used to tell us that Christian Cardinal Tumi was his mentor. He inspired him in many ways. That is why we felt the need to bring him in the studio, answer this question for us. Good evening, Doctor, and welcome.
Oh, thank you very much. There was no way you could be discussing a subject like this that concerns His Eminent Christian Cardinal Tumi, and I will not be here to say something on his behalf and speak his mind, so to speak. And when you say, you are right in saying that he was my mentor, and it didn't start today. It started in 1993 when I was in Betua. You know my story in Betua, when Luis was killed, and I spoke up. From then, he had very great respect for me, and we shared a lot. And before dying, I knew his mind, and we worked hand in glove. And you know that in our culture, when a father is dying, he gives his cap, and his bag to his son, right? Let's say that the bag is with me, and that's why I'm here to talk about it today.
Okay, the bag is with you. We also in the company of Joseph Weno. He is the editor-in-chief of Mediafrique Radio, and he has been a keen follower to almost everything that happens within the AGC, given that he lived and is still living in Boya, Southwest regional capital. Good evening, Weno.
Good evening to you, Mr. Leo. Good evening to Dr. Nick. It's a pleasure to be on set with you, and of course to discuss this very important issue, because we know that it is easy to start but difficult to end. When it broke out in 2016, I'm sure we had not anticipated that it was going to take this long. And so when efforts like the one made by Cardinal Tumi, who is to the of blessed memory, and those who accompanied him in this initiative started coming up, would have loved to see it come to fruition, but it's rather unfortunate that it never was. And maybe it's not too late. And so it's a pleasure for me to be on set today to discuss this. Okay.
We were hoping to have Elie Smith join us today. We just having information from Ewane that there is in a meeting. So we certainly are going to reorganize another edition where he will be present, given that he is the Secretary General of the AGC and spokesperson for that organization. Or, I don't know what I said. Project or something like that.
Yeah,
but he was and is still the Secretary General and the spokesperson. Ndifor Richard is also supposed to be part of today's edition. Ndifor, good evening and welcome. Ndifor is not yet there. I'll start with you, Dr. Nick Ngwanyam. You say on this platform that leaving Christian Cardinal Tumi left the back. The project, was it the project or just the back with you?
It's his wishes. I mean, it's figurative when I'm talking about back. It's figurative. It's his mindset. It's his wishes, his desires, what he would have wished for, and his spirit. Like when Elijah was going, he left the mantle with Elisha. Yeah, the mantle is with me. So That's what I'm here to talk about today, and to continue to preach his message and to preach his vision and so on. Though somewhere along the line, because people did not understand him, they threw rotten tomatoes and eggs at him. But I think that's very unfortunate. If you still want to continue throwing the tomatoes, I'm right here, no problem. But we have to continue to speak his mind, you know, carry on his vision, and make sure that we get peace in Cameroon. And what I must tell Cameroonians before we even get lost is that even though the AGC at some point, you know, the AGC was supposed to hold before the major national dialogue. That was the key thing about the AGC. It was supposed to hold before the major national dialogue, but you know, some ill-intentioned people, they torpedoed it from the background, and we know the people. And when they torpedoed it because they were too strong, fine. You know, we went to the major national dialogue, and today 90% of the people agree that the major national dialogue and special status are failed. And they are failed because we failed to listen to the advice from His Eminent Christian Cardinal Tumi. So we have harvested what we planted. Now, like I said again, the raison d'etre of the Anglophone General Conference, there was timing to it, and it was supposed to be before the major national dialogue. Once you had the major national dialogue without the Anglophone General Conference, then the raison d'etre was no longer there, and then we were beating around the bush. And we spent 2 years, and 2 years going on to 3 years now, trying to figure out what exactly is in that major national dialogue, and we finally have all realized that we need to look for something else because that damn thing is not working.
Okay, good evening to you, Godi. New Kongi, it's been long. I'm glad to read from you again, and to you, Njong Emmanuel, and Gilberto Solo. Good evening to you, Young Olen, and all of you watching through our Facebook page. Are you surprised, like many, that after the demise of the late Cardinal Tumi, we hear very little about the AGC?
Well, I'll not say surprised per se, because even before his demise, just like Dr. Nick said, the powers that fought against the holding of the AGC were really strong. We saw how much it was fought in the regions concerned, especially in the southwest region, where the administration used its surrogates to ensure that it never came to be. And like Dr. Nick rightfully said, the government missed a golden opportunity to have a credible asset to help resolve the stalemate in which we find ourselves today. Because, like you rightfully said, the holding of the AGC was supposed to be in prelude of the holding of the major national dialogue. If we go back in history to see what happened in 1961, before the Fumban Constitutional Conference took place in July 1961, there was the holding in June of the Bamenda All-Party Conference. That is how I look at what the AGC would have been, what Cardinal Tumi tried to do alongside those who were working in collaboration with him. The Bamenda All-Party Conference provided an opportunity for the then Southern Cameroonian politicians to meet amongst themselves, discuss and come out with proposals that they would have tabled at the July 1961 Fumban Constitutional Conference. This is exactly what the AGC would have provided, because up till today, we keep asking ourselves, or we keep hearing the administration talking about on va dialoguer avec qui. They missed that opportunity.
But how representative was the AGC going to be of those fighting? Because the AGC itself did not receive the blessings of those who were fighting.
We know that we've seen a lot of intransigence on both sides of the spectrum since the outbreak of this conflict. But if they had given the opportunity for this AGC to take place, because it would have provided, one, it would have permitted the government to identify credible interlocutors with whom they could dialogue. Because whether we like it or not, when it would have taken place, we would have at least been able to see who can speak. It is true that not everyone would have given it its blessings. Even in the diaspora, we saw those who were fighting and bashing it even before it ever took place, because it never did take place in the first place. So it would have provided this opportunity for the government to identify credible interlocutors. And we ended up going into a major national dialogue, and we see what it is. At the end of the day, we just don't want to be sincere with ourselves that it was a woeful failure.
Okay. Radis Ngu, Makia Valentine, good evening to you guys. Kennedy we want to good evening to you, Fendi Bile Inusa Tache, and to you, Ngong to Trevor. Good evening to you guys, Dr. Nick Ngwanyam. Even after the major national dialogue, we still saw Christian Cardinal Tumi late have hold meetings with the bishops, the imams, the moderators, and are you worried that they no longer meet? What could be happening?
No, you have to understand that when we're talking about the Anglophone General Conference, in any project, there's always the vision bearer. Mm-hmm. That's why when people go to war, if you want to end on a war, kill the leader. Mm-hmm. And the war is over in the sense that, you know, the followers become confused. Okay. It was you could say without getting wrong that the concept and the force driving the Anglophone General Conference was 70% Cardinal Tumi. So when he dies, he carries that with him, you know, and you know, to people were looking up to his image and many other things. And when the other persons too saw the way he was being bashed, of course they don't have the stature and the credibility of the cardinal. But if people could shoot at Cardinal Tumi, then what would they do with them? They kind of like just crush them. So in a way, but like we said, after we ignored him and went on with the major national dialogue, then the raison d'etre of the Anglophone General Conference probably piped down. But given that we will be having another dialogue, because we must have another dialogue, whether we like it or not, there might be need now for Anglophones coming together. You might still call it the same name or coin it differently. But the question is, you know, Anglophones must begin to speak together to begin to get a certain kind of understanding. But what I can tell you, even before you take back the microphone, is to say that even though the Anglophone General Conference did not hold, even though the major national dialogue took place with all whatever and with the fanfare and whatnot, the cardinal continued to do some other kind of work in camera that the public was not aware of it, and that's what probably I want to tell the public about it today, because you were not aware of it. The cardinal continued to work in camera with His Excellency President Paul Biya, one-on-one, all right? One-on-one, and there was a lot that they discussed because they were able to look at things as adults and look at ways and means of making sure that their legacy stays, making sure that, you know, peace actually counts, because this destruction is helping nobody. You know, we are all Cameroonians, be them Anglophones, Francophones, soldiers, civilians, and so we are still the same people, and we are just hurting ourselves because we of ego. So in reality, the two of them were doing a lot of work in the background. It's just unfortunate that the cardinal went before time, you know. But he went at God's own appointed time. But he probably went a little bit too early because the hot plate was still on the table. But here we are today. But what I can guarantee you is that whatever they discuss will come to pass, word verbatim.
Rick, we saw the persons who worked very closely with the late Cardinal Tumi. Mm-hmm. Very prolific persons out there. They are still living. Are they also afraid to take the bullets like the Cardinal did, or mm-hmm. what is stopping them? Is it the fact that they lack the charisma, the courage to bring people together? Because okay, if the objective was to meet to work towards the major national dialogue, which eventually happened. But there are other things that are happening still in the northwest and southwest regions. We hear of killings here and there. We saw what happened to the Manfi hospital. Mm-hmm. So what stops them from coming together?
I think
is it fear?
We are not going to have a watertight explanation to what is prevailing on the ground right now, because what obtained in 2018, when they came up with the idea of the AGC, is not exactly what is on the ground now. We're still living the crisis, yes, but the stakes have gradually changed. People have shifted positions, and the situation has metamorphosed somehow. Now we're caught up in a stalemate, in a deadlock, where we hear the argument on both sides. The other people say we want justice, the others say we want peace. Now, Dr. Nick talked about the charisma. He talked about the person of Cardinal Tumi. It is true that we still have the likes of the Secretary General Smith, who was also very instrumental. He wanted to see that this comes to pass. We saw the moderator of the Presbyterian Church. We saw the Imam, the chief Imam of the Bamenda Central Mosque. But truth be told, they do not have that aura, that they do not have that respect that Cardinal Tumi commanded. More to that, he was a prelate of a different class. The one who would say things without any fear of bashings. And besides, he was a Cardinal Emeritus, if I should put it that way, no longer very much in active service, of having to be maybe distracted with other commitments of his everyday work. He had a particular goal to see to it that he served Cameroon and make his contributions to see this come to an end. So again, I would say that we're not going to give a watertight explanation as to if it is because the others are afraid. The stakes have changed. Mr. Lee would agree with me. The
stakes have changed. We have new challenges. Things have changed. Is that reason enough for them to stay behind?
If you ask me, is there still a need for an AGC? I would say yes. There is still a need.
Okay. So what stops them from coming together and mobilizing?
The level of division amongst the Anglophones themselves. I think the administration has played a very good role. I'm talking good from their perspective in dividing and conquering. They've been able to drive a wedge between the Anglophones. I mean, when you get into social media platforms, WhatsApp fora, you see the level of hatred, the level of bigotry, the level of division. It is playing exactly to the advantage of the administration. It is what they wanted, to see to it that there is no united front amongst the Anglophones, so that they cannot have a particular ideology that they rally behind all of them to push across. I think we're exactly where the administration wanted us to be. We're exactly where they wanted us to be.
If you know that this is what the government actually desires, that is playing in your disfavor, and you play into it, who's to blame?
We are all to blame. We are all to blame, Mr. Liu. I'll take you back to what transpires. We're in different WhatsApp fora. We're in different platforms where we discuss what's happening in the country. And you see the level of intransigence. No one wants to budge. No, everything is interpreted now from an ethnic perspective. Everything is interpreted from a political standpoint. Whatever you bring forth, as long as maybe you are not in the same ethnic group with the other person, they don't want serious into with you. And that is why I say we're exactly where the administration wanted us to be. Because everything is interpreted from an ethnic point of view.
Okay. Tani D, good evening to you. Ike Gabriel Mark Akko, good evening to you. Nyan John Kevin, good evening to you. And to you. Ebud Clinton Tabi, Fon Paul, good evening to you. Gabonese, good evening to you. Dr. Nick, we're looking at what is happening. Christian Cardinal Tumi is not there. But if one were to ask, where are the members of the AGC? Where are they? Are they not living?
We have to understand again, like I said, when they came together under the umbrella of the AGC, they were very convinced that that AGC was going to hold, and then they would make meaning to the whole thing. But when the AGC was denied them, and in such an aggressive manner, then their spirits kind of like were killed.
The meetings, I saw meetings continued.
Yeah, meetings. Did the meetings continue after the Major National Dialogue? No, because I went to the Major National Dialogue and I was very observant, because the Cardinal had come there, you know, with some other gentlemen, and they had their booth where they had their own material on federalism and so on, and I could see the way government people, you know, those people who are for the union government, for the union position, how they technically avoided, his presence, avoided what he stood for, and then you would notice that even in the hall, the body language was very negative and so on. So you can understand again when a lot of the people joined the AGC, they joined it and they protected themselves with the face of the cardinal. When the cardinal is no longer there, then they feel very vulnerable. And then the other thing you've got to understand again, the raison d'etre of the AGC at that time was to lay down a solid foundation for discussion points for the major national dialogue. Then once the major national dialogue holds, and then everybody is thinking that is the best thing that ever came to Cameroon, the best thing that ever happened to us, then everybody folds their hands and say, let's see how good it goes. Then before we know it, the guns are spitting fire all over the whole place, and nothing seems to be working. So you are now saying, hey, why did we neglect that Anglophone General Conference? And probably what you are trying to do is to say that probably we really need to talk about this thing, because something definitely is not working. And let us remind ourselves again about the problems of Cameroon and what we call the Anglophone problem. Because as time goes on, people go on social media and distort the whole thing and many other things. The Anglophone problem comes from the fact that the Anglophone has been marginalized in the Union. That's the bottom line. Has been marginalized in all ways in the Union. And if the Anglophone were not marginalized, and even if we had just half a cake on the table, and that half of cake was seen as being distributed evenly, and everybody participating in baking more cakes with no color differentiation, there never would have been a problem. And so that marginalization has hurt everybody. And and my understanding and the understanding of many persons was that if the government had genuinely paid attention to solving the Anglophone problems, then many other problems in the country would have been solved and would have been very peaceful and developing. What do I mean? When you complain about the Anglophone problem and say we have this problem, or people of the other regions will say yes, but we have them too. Yeah, that's agreed. But the Anglophones came from a different culture, have a different culture, a different mindset, and if you left them alone, they would solve all their problems. That's the bottom line. They're telling you that we have problems, you have problems, we are not complaining about them, we are complaining about them. And if you gave us the opportunity and the free hand, we'll solve our problems without you. That's what the Anglophones are saying. And now that said, there is poverty, there's general poverty in the whole nation. And now, when you talk about poverty, you can divide the nation now. Forget about Bulu, Beti, Bamileke. Wait a minute, brother. There is the rich, and then there is the poor. And the poor are all over. And the rich are just a few. So it's more, when you look at this Anglophone problem, it's more of the rich, a few rich people holding everybody hostage. And then there is bad development, bad governance. So there's a lot.
Doctor, my question to you is the members of this AGC, they are existing. They are existing. The imams are there, the moderator is there, the bishops are there, the pastors of all other churches are there. My question was to, where are they? Why are they not here?
Let me come in here.
Are they dead?
Mr. Leo, the reason why we can't see them really come out, besides the fact that the cardinal is no more, is the fact that they keep pushing the agenda to make us believe that the major national dialogue was a success. Remember, like Dr. Nick rightfully said, the reason for the AGC was to prepare the grounds ahead of the major national dialogue. Ahead of a dialogue, the government chose to call it the major national dialogue. Once they continue to push the agenda to make us believe...
The name is an all-Anglophone conference.
Conference.
Yes.
Normally...
Let me come. You people give the impression that it was called up because of the major national dialogue. Please, I don't buy into that, because even before the president announced the major national dialogue. Dr. Simon Munzu, who is the brain behind this, already started at the advent of this.
Now, Mr. Leo, this is the point I'm making. Yes. Maybe we are not making use. It was
not created for the major
national dialogue. Maybe we are making use of the expression the major national dialogue.
Yes.
But the raison d'etre of calling for the AGC was in preparation of maybe coming together with proposals that will help resolve the Anglophone problem.
Yes.
The Anglophone crisis, because there's a crisis, there is a problem. And which meant that once they had succeeded in identifying credible interlocutors and coming up with suggestions that they thought will help, if addressed, will resolve the problem, it meant that they will finally meet somewhere to discuss it, to have it resolved. That was the result there. And now, when they continue pushing the agenda, giving us the impression that the major national dialogue, like Dr. Nick said, was the best thing that happened to Cameroonians, I think we need to remind ourselves of some truths here. There is an analogy told about the ostrich, I don't know how true it is, that at times in the face of danger, it runs and hides its head, and because it's not seeing the danger that was around, it convinces itself that it is safe. That is where we find ourselves now. We are trying to convince ourselves with a lie. We're trying to convince ourselves with a lie, thinking that it's good. Let's look at most of the things that came out of the major national dialogue. It's all wet blanket, toothless bulldogs, and a yardstick that is not serving. Now, we've created institutions again with the names of what existed before, House of Chiefs. When we look at the House of Chiefs that has been recreated now, is it what existed back in the days of federalism? From the 1961 to when it was dismantled, we've created the special status, like they call it today. The common man in the streets today, the common man in the northwest and southwest region, are they feeling can you tell somebody that there is something like a special status and they tell you that they're feeling any different from what existed before the crisis erupted? Not at all.
Are you telling me, are you by this explanation, are you telling me where these guys are?
No, I'm driving to that.
Okay.
I'm saying that we have continued to push the agenda, giving the impression that the major national dialogue was a success and has resolved, whereas we continue to see the problem on the ground. So it invalidates, by doing that, we take away the argument for them to want to come up with a suggestion.
But the AGC was not convened by the government. If you think that somebody is pushing an agenda that suggests that things have been done, that it is coming from the government bench, isn't it? Yeah. Now, these other guys are not bound to go by what government says. They are there to look for the most efficient way of solving the problem.
And that's what was coming again.
If government is pushing an agenda and you think it's not right, what?
That's what was coming, that the time has come for us to be very sincere with ourselves and agree that this problem, we are found in a deadlock right now. We are in a stalemate. You realize that at every point in time when we talk about resolving the problem now, there are two things that come up. The administration, that is the government bench, pushes the agenda that now it's an issue of terrorists disturbing the peace. We want peace. We want peace. Tell your children in the bushes to drop their guns. Let's give peace a chance. Peace is a good thing, but how sustainable will it be if the problem has not been resolved? The other side, each time we talk about resolving the crisis and you push the agenda of peace to them, what do they tell us? Justice. They alone understand what they mean by justice right now, because don't get me wrong, I know the definition of justice, but I think that the idea of justice as pushed forward by the pro-separatists, is a little shallow from what justice would actually imply here. So, what am I saying therefore? We are in a stalemate. We are in a deadlock. It's time for people to rise up again, to realize that if we do not do something radical right now, to come up and acknowledge that we are not going forward, we are not coming backward, and it is time for us to sit down and identify what needs to be addressed.
I hope when you say for people to rise up, it is mental rising up. I don't want to.
I'm not talking about somebody going to the streets again. I'm saying that there is need for us. If we, there is need. In fact, there is need for an Anglophone conference again. Okay. Yes. There is need for one, but some people give the impression that, okay, with the handing over of the 400-page documents by Cardinal Tumi to the government, that was before the major national dialogue, okay, everything should be done with. Is that the impression you also have?
The thing about handing over documents to the Prime Minister before the major national dialogue, so many documents were handed. There was a lot of consultation. In fact, the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister was overloaded and overworked, but he alone knew what he was doing. Because if the major national dialogue failed, it's not because he didn't have sound advice. It's just because there was an agenda that had to be followed, and that agenda was followed, and we have seen the results. Technically, the major national dialogue was supposed to be a dialogue between the government and the Anglophones. Un point. And trait. And those Anglophones were supposed to be drawn from the different groups, those with the unionist mind, those with the federalist or confederalist mind, and those with the separatist minds, and so on, and from different class strata from the northwest and southwest, and brought together, and we tried to look for a way forward. But what happened was, what we called a major national dialogue turned out to be a major national monologue. That's the problem. And you know that before the dialogue, there was the other commission called the Bilingualism Commission, which is just another thing that needs to go. The Bilingualism Commission went to the northwest and southwest, and when they came to the northwest, we told them exactly what we wanted. Then when they went to the southwest, of course, you know, that's when some kind of thing was cooked up. I guess it was the agreement of all the people of the southwest that they don't want federation because the Northwesterners will marginalize them. I understand. But let me just finish. Let me just finish.
We covered some of these deliberations.
Let me finish.
I'll let you finish.
I know what you're saying.
I'll let you finish. I just want to make a point here on the issue of because we covered some of these deliberations during those consultations. And truth be told, in the halls when these things were taking place, there are people who stood up and talked about the issue of federation. But when we saw the Boya Declaration, we never had this mentioned.
Just give me a minute. Let me finish. Let me land. Now, that said, this is what happened during the major national dialogue. You know, everybody, you know, was kind of like, I don't know how to put this. We are on the air, but let's say it. But the major national dialogue was supposed to look at the problem of the Anglophones. But whoever had the yam and the knife to lead that major national dialogue to concrete results decided to use it more as a wedge, to drive that wedge between the northwest and southwest, instead of using it to solve the problem between the Anglophones and the government. Am I communicating?
I think so. No,
please. We are not discussing the major national dialogue here. We are discussing the AGC.
Yes.
The AGC has to do with Anglophones.
Yes.
Let us talk Anglophones and the major national. We may reconvene here to talk about the major national dialogue. The question I ask you, Dr. Nick, is that Christian Cardinal Tumi, so rest in peace, handed a 400-page document to the Prime Minister. Some people think that the AGC should have ended at that level. What do you think? Was it not was it not also imperative or important to sit back some time after to say, okay, this is what we went to. It was not taken into consideration. What do we do? Should the AGC be led to run because the Cardinal is not there?
I don't really know how to answer that question because I'm trying to bring something to you that
you are his mentee.
No, I'm his mentee, and I'm telling you, the pain that he was feeling.
Yeah, but it failed already. We are just going to be repeating what happened at the
Yes, it failed.
Yes, but we are some years after.
We have some years after, but if you want to ask me, probably just forget about it. Ask me from now on, what do we do? If you ask me that question, I will answer.
That's the AGC.
No, it's not AGC. Ask me now, what do we do to move the nation from where we are forward? I will tell you. Are you understand? But if we keep going to the AGC, we are going nowhere.
Mr. Leo, let me bring up one name that I think that even though at the level when we started talking about the AGC, the name did not come up very often because of maybe what he had been through from the outbreak of this problem in the northwest and southwest regions. I don't know if I would say it's fortunate or unfortunate that now he'll be described as a politician because he has now been co-opted into a political outfit.
Okay,
Barrister Felix Agbonkongo. That is one person. I think that well, he has suffered a lot of bashing from the separatists or the pro-separatists who look at him at times and say a traitor. But anyone who is sincere with himself would know that from the onset, Barrister Felix Agbonkongo has never had secessionist tendencies. He agreed to the problem of the Anglophones. He was for the point of view that Anglophones were marginalized. But anyone who is sincere with himself will not see him as a traitor because all along he has had a federalist standpoint. I think that is one person that with the work he's done, with the prices had to pay to be in jail, with what he's been doing on the ground, would have been a potent force as far as convening an Anglophone conference is concerned. One who would have been able to rally Anglophones. Let's not forget he's from the southwest region of the country. He's from Manu Division, to be more precise. But each time you hear him talk about the Anglophone conference or the Anglophone problem in Cameroon and how it should be resolved, you are never going to see any ethnic tendencies in his speech, as opposed to other personalities that each time they want to stand up, we see them trying to lay the blame on other groups of people, push the blame on other groups of people, give the impression that even in their region, the problem is caused by other people from other regions.
Excuse me, many persons are writing that the volume is low. I don't know where the problem is. Elie, please, can you just check it to see the volume level? Some persons are writing that the volume is low. Can you, if it is true, can you just add it? Yes, go on.
Yes, so I was saying that that is one person that if, again I said, I don't know if it's fortunate or unfortunate that now he might have lost that credibility by officially being a politician now, since he has been co-opted into a political outfit, that if he were to stand for such an issue again, it will be interpreted from a political point of view. But prior to his being nominated within this political outfit that he's now officially part of, I think he was a potent figure that if we were talking about rallying Anglophones, with the work he's done, with the prices he has had to pay, the number of months he spent behind bars, and the fact that, I mean, he has at some point in time accepted that he could be a sacrificial lamb, I think Barrister Felix Agbonkongo would have been a potent force to be able to rally Anglophones in the country and bring on board clergymen who are very neutral to be able to speak in one voice as Anglophones.
Hey, good evening to you all there, and good evening to me, Miss Ndi writing there. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Thanks for the program. I think one of the problems here is the division of the Southern Cameroonians, and the fact each of these leaders are concerned only about their personal interest. Imagine that there are about 4 different TV stations, all in the name of, okay, Clovis is writing from Miss Sage. Dr. Nick, now you say that he was your mentor, and certainly you saw him fight so hard for this to happen. Yes, and he's gone, and very little is said about it. What, according to you, would be your advice to his close collaborators, the moderator, the bishops, the imams, and persons like you? You want them to look away from what obtained then?
The Anglophone problem is going to be solved. It's going to be solved differently.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a solution. Like I've kept telling you a long time ago that
about the crystal ball.
About the crystal ball, the writing on the wall. You know, you expect it to come through the door, but it shows up through the window. And so all I can say is that the Anglophone problem will be solved, and in the days ahead, you're going to probably have some declarations which already address themselves to some of the problems, and then we would, you know, that would already begin to bring the country together and raise hope amongst people again, and there will be a new mindset that will be reborn, and you know, when people technically, if you were to shuffle people around at the top, you know, shuffle people around a little bit and bring in new blood and new thinking and so on, that problem will be addressed much sooner than later.
Okay, the volume is okay, Mr. Liu. I'm enjoying the program. Dr. Nav is writing from Balikumbat village. Now, you said that before leaving, late Christian Cardinal Tumi left some secrets with you.
Yeah.
What did he tell you?
He told me the problem will be solved.
But he's not here.
No, he's not here. That's what I'm saying. The problem will be solved.
Mr. Liu.
He's working in the spirit?
No, he worked before going. And when two adults who respect themselves agree on something that touches on their legacy, they see it done.
There's no problem that would last forever without being resolved.
Two adults, maybe some people came in late.
2 adults, before the cardinal went away, you know, when they, let me go over it. The cardinal was so passionate about seeing the Anglophone problem solved. But, you know, and he did what he did, the AGC and many other things, working with bishops to try to address the problem. And, you know, the height of it would have been if that Anglophone General Conference held in Boya, but it was torpedoed, okay? But when it was torpedoed, he continued to, like an adult, he was not angry, because someone would have been angry and not come to the major national dialogue or not be part of everything and so on. Or like when he was sent on a mission to go and talk about special status, you will see him going. Not necessarily because he believes in it, but he doesn't want you to fail and you say it failed because of him. No, he goes along with you so that at the end of the day, when it fails, you weigh the cap yourself. I did what you said I should do, but you see it's not working. So that's why he did those things, and people will not understand why he did it. But in as much as he was doing those things, he no longer believed in what was going on. And then he went backstage and he changed strategy. This time around, he was not carrying the whole AGC team on his back to go see the president. It was a one-on-one. You and I are age mates. You and I, we've known each other for a long time. You and I, it is our country that is burning. You and I are soon going to go. What is the legacy we'll leave? How do we solve these problems? And putting their two heads together with a few collaborators around, they were working on something more concrete. While the nation was being fed the major national dialogue, and then a lot was going on to see what peace could milk out of it, but they since realized that there should be something better that can solve this problem. And when you listen very carefully for people who have ears to hear and can read between the lines, there is something that would have solved our problem, but the event happened after the major national dialogue. And this is it. When His Excellency President Paul Biya was speaking to Mo Ibrahim in Paris, you remember?
Yes.
He said it clearly that these Anglophones were trying to make them become Francophones, and the experiment is that was an experiment in bad taste. You know, that's what he said. It was an experiment in bad taste. Yeah. And therefore, all he was saying is that it has not worked, and therefore we have to look for a formula that really works. And that formula, when at the major national dialogue, you know, people were trying. I think people were trying most to please the president or to please whatever. But the president had given everybody a clean slate, do something and solve this problem. But because we are used to praise singing, begging, and so on and so forth, instead of actually dealing with the problem, you try to scratch your head and ask yourself, what should I do so that the president should be happy? What should I do so that I can conserve my post? What should I do? And so people did not put the common good ahead; they put their personal interests ahead.
If you think what they did was not pleasing to the president of the republic, or did not meet his aspirations, but the recommendations are being put into application today.
Before I say a word on the issue of the recommendation.
But don't forget, the recommendations were put.
Yes.
It is about the law. Even when you have a bad law, it keeps going until you change it. So every Tom, Dick, and Harry has realized that it's not working.
These recommendations came out of the major national dialogue. They went to the president for validation.
Yes, if they went to he's not going to cancel it because it came from a major national dialogue. But everybody sees that he has failed, and everybody knows that we continue with it for 50 years. We're not going anywhere. So anybody who is wise knows that we have to go back to the table and change the strategy. That's the bottom line.
I was coming to that, Mr. Liu. All what is happening now, I think that we're playing to the gallery. If we want to resolve the Anglophone problem, we should be humble enough to admit that we need to correct the errors of the past. And when we talk about correcting the errors of the past, it implies that we need to acknowledge that there is a group of people who came into a union who are feeling aggrieved. Let's not be deceived by the fact that they've driven a wedge between the Northwest and Southwest, and a few psychophans sing a song that gives the impression that they are not united. The common Anglophone, since after 1972, feels like they've been colonized. That's just the truth.
Do you feel like you are colonized?
I feel like we are colonized, for crying out loud.
Okay.
For crying out loud, every Anglophone, including me, feels colonized in what we call a unitary state. I cannot understand how. It is true we've been one all along. History tells us about the colonial epoch. I don't want to go into a history lesson. The likes of Professor Ngo can better tell us about that. But that the condition upon which two factions that later made up one country come together, and that particular condition is abrogated, and you want to drive the idea
abrogated by who?
I mean, history will tell us about the fact that the political leaders of the time it is true the likes of Foncha, the likes of Mona, the likes of the Endelis, all campaigned in favor of the dissolution of a federal state, in favor of a unitary state as opposed to the federal system that existed. But we know that at this point in time, given the weaknesses that existed among the politicians, they were all now dancing according to the whims and caprices of the head of state at the time, President Amadou Ahidjo. Okay, let me make a point, please. Let me learn a little bit.
Yes, you are going to continue, but I want us to stay in line with what we are discussing, because the issue is the legacy of the late Cardinal Tumi.
Yeah.
But if we don't discuss in line with it, it means that there was no need putting a topic for today.
Yeah.
And we will not be doing justice to him.
Yeah.
He had a project. And all what we are discussing here would fit another topic on the failures of the major national dialogue or this. But I want us to do justice to the topic, please.
Yes. No. It's rather unfortunate
tie it because yeah. I want to, when you say we are failed, we are bring it from the Anglophone perspective. Why do you think that after the Christian Cardinal Tumi left this earth, why are things not moving?
I made one point and I was now coming to this one, that we were only going to resolve this problem when we decide to correct the errors of the past. And I've cited one of the problems, the historical issues that need to be corrected. The second thing is that we should understand that Anglophones are aggrieved and they feel aggrieved. So until we give them an opportunity to constitute themselves to answer the question of who will the government dialogue with, we hear this question come up every now and then. On va dialoguer avec qui? So that is why it becomes imperative for an Anglophone conference to be able to harmonize the different ideologies. Like we know now, we have those who continue to preach the issue of decentralization. We have the federalists and the confederalists, as he will put it. And we have those who are bent on the issue of the secession. So until we provide an opportunity for the Anglophones to sit down amongst themselves.
We should provide that opportunity.
First of all, the government should create an enabling environment. If they don't do that, then every other thing that we claim that is aimed at resolving the problem is window dressing. Okay,
so you think the government is not providing the opportunity? No. Those who are out of the country, they are under no obligation by the government not to unite. What is stopping Anglophones from out of the country across the board to come together and then prepare themselves? What is stopping them?
I would say greed, personal interest over time. You know, with the passage of time, we've seen a lot of cracks emerge, even within the country. Like I rightfully said, the government too has played its...
No, away from here. I'm talking out there. The government is also... The diaspora, the government is asking the diaspora...
With time, with the passage of time, time is one factor that it's a very serious dynamic. With the passage of time, we've seen people have shifted positions. We've seen people who were seemingly allies who are now at daggers drawn. So it's rather unfortunate that an aspect of personal interest and greed, and people have now been rather thinking of feeding fat from the Anglophone problem. That is what we find ourselves today. One person is insulting another person and completely running down maybe what, by the way, I'm not a sympathizer of the secessionist cause. Let me make that crystal clear. And I think that the secessionist cause is suffering a setback today because they themselves have been unable to unite. Personal interest, greed. People want what will come to them. They are now taking advantage of the sufferings of the Anglophones back in the country. Away from
the secessionists in the diaspora, we know that Christian Cardinal Tumi, his dream was to bring Anglophones together so that they can talk. Now, we keep the secessionists in the diaspora away. We have CPDM militants in the diaspora, SDF militants in the diaspora. We have civil society in the diaspora who are not part of the secessionist movement. What also stops them from coming together?
The one point that I'm trying to bring up here, you keep wanting that I should not bring that up. I keep making use of the government is playing its cards very well, and the divide and rule has worked to perfection. Because we are busy fighting amongst, also the ethnic card keeps coming up. Let's just take a good example. We are in WhatsApp fora with people even in the diaspora and elsewhere. There is hardly an issue that we can discuss without insults popping up in the next 10 minutes after. Because the aspect of divide and rule has worked to perfection, and everybody thinks that they can only interpret everything now from an ethnic point of view, which is rather unfortunate for us.
Okay, Mr. Moderator, the people who were to participate in the AGC were, they think that was the question, but I think they haven't answered the questions. It's Divine Cham is writing from Boya, it's true. They don't want to answer my questions. They're taking that. I don't know. Good evening, Mr. Elie. Please kindly get your panelists, especially Weno, to talk on whether Cardinal Tumi died with the AGC. That is the point. You see, the televiewers, what they want to get from people are not telling them. The second person.
No, let's refresh the first question. Let me answer. Yeah, refresh that first question. Divine or something.
No, he's saying that the question that I've asked is not being answered. The second person is saying that people are still not telling them whether Cardinal Tumi died with the AGC or not.
All right. Let's put it in clear language. Probably we answered that question, but you know, a lot of people don't understand, can't read between the lines when someone is talking. Let us say that he died with the AGC. All right. The AGC, as conceived by him, he died with it, and the followers could not follow because their captain was dead. All right. So now, if we are going to look forward to a new arrangement in view of the new dialogue that is coming, we are not going to go to those very members of the agency.
The dynamics have changed.
No. The dynamics have changed, and they changed very much too, because Elie Smith replaced Dr. Munzu. Dr. Munzu was seen as a good force to reckon with, but due to some internal politics that I will not mention here, you know, and Dr. Munzu, he was treated badly and so on, and then Elie Smith took over, but the Elie Smith does not have the charisma and the mindset of Dr. Munzu. So if at all,
but Dr. Munzu, that is clear. He has said it severally. His life was threatened by the secessionists. It's very clear.
Yes.
That is why he dropped from the position.
But that's what we are saying is we are going to have. Okay, let's put it in very clear terms so that anybody can understand. Number one, the cardinal died with the AGC. Okay, but the vision of the AGC or what he stood for, that was a vision. He cannot die. But because we are going to have another dialogue, there will be another AGC, but in a different format. All right, with different persons and so on, but the objectives will still be the same: to canalize Anglophones to think in a more productive way and together without all these divisions. I hope I've answered that question.
Okay, it's very unfortunate. Elie Smith was supposed to be part of this discussion to also answer some of these questions.
Maybe before we pop up to the next, I would even say that even before the Cardinal died, may he so rest in peace, the AGC idea had, I should say, had died, because first of all it was postponed from the 29th and the 30th of August till to the 21st and the 22nd of November 2018, when they thought maybe they would have done the necessary groundwork for it to finally take place. And the resistance they faced in Boya, all thanks to machinations done in the background to ensure that it never took place. Later on, it became very glaring to the Cardinal that the forces that were fighting the holding of the AGC were maybe stronger than they had initially imagined.
Okay. Mr. Liu, ask your panelists if it is abnormal to find divisive tendencies during crises like what we are seeing. Okay. Mr. Liu, good evening. Dr. Nick always rephrases questions to answer in his own way. Let him tell us the way forward after the AGC, after the demise of Tumi. Simple.
Okay, that's just a simple question. The way forward. What's the way forward? The way forward is that there's going to be changes. There must be changes in the government, so to speak, because if the major national dialogue failed and we have had all these difficulties, reconstruction before, all those kind of things, it's because the people who were supposed to have brought the peace are the same people who said that there was no Anglophone problem. You remember? And at the end of the day, you know, the managing of the major national dialogue and whatever came out of it was by the same people who said there was no Anglophone at the beginning of things, said there was no Anglophone problem, and then in the middle of the thing they said there was an Anglophone problem, but this is the solution. And then they're the very ones, you know, trying to bring solutions. You know, when you have people who speak from both sides of their mouth, it doesn't work, and therefore all of that must be corrected, otherwise nothing will work.
The way forward for me is that both sides should be able to make concessions. Now, when I talk about concession from the perspective of the government bench, I'm not talking about creating institutions, commissions of this and that again. I'm talking about to answer the question of on va dialoguer avec qui that we have heard very often. They should show signals that they really want to engage a dialogue. Look at the optimism that rose up at some point when it filtered out that the delegation had approached the separatist leaders who were in jail. Do you see how much excitement arose? I mean, almost every day on radio, I'm the editor-in-chief of a radio, almost every day on radio, people were willing to know how it was progressing.
What was the reaction from the other factions?
That's why I'm saying there is need for concession on two sides. There's need for concession. People should be able to understand that for this to be resolved, we cannot be intransigent and expect that the problem will be resolved. The other side have also become so intransigent that if you do not agree with their own point of view, that the black leg tendency, and we have seen beheadings, we've seen maiming, we've seen killing and kidnap. For God's sake, they are only reinforcing the argument of the government bench. And that's why the word terrorist is being used recurrently on them today. Because if you are going to be killing, kidnapping, cutting fingers, maiming people, asking for ransom, which other word than terrorism should be used on you? So there is need for concession on both sides of the spectrum. The government should show the green light to see that they really want to negotiate with the real actors, while the other people on the other side should also show some green light to see that they are willing to see the problem resolved.
Good evening, Mr. Liu and the panel. The government of Cameroon will never give room for Anglophones to come to one, because that is a very dangerous move against the government. Okay, Saleh is writing from Muteng. Good evening to you, Saleh. Please, my question has not been answered. Do they also agree that AGC is the follow personality than vision? That explains why immediately the vision bearer died and his plan failed. Again, don't you see that the cardinal was neutral, but his followers have stance well known. Only neutral entities can rally Anglophones. A.K. Gabriel is writing, Mr. Liu, ask your panelists if it is normal to have find divisive this thing. Okay, according to him, cardinal was neutral, but his followers have taken stance and difficult to rally people. Good evening to all of you out there. I wanted to ask this question. Now, if it happens that those Southern Cameroonians in the diaspora wish to have a meeting before the national dialogue, will the government release those our top leaders in Kondengi? Sebastian is writing from Kumba. Sebastian. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm Nixon from Yaoundé. I think a federal system of government is a solution to the Anglophone crisis where governors can solve their problems and not take everything to Yaoundé. You want to sign documents, you must go to Yaoundé, and all they will tell you is the sous-prefect is not there. How many governors do we have in Cameroon that are Anglophones? How can... Good evening, Mr. Liu and everyone in the studio. In fact, I hurried home just to watch this program live and to listen to some right-thinking minds like your panelists of today. We really need people who will speak the truth without fear or favor. It's rather unfortunate that 6 years passed on what almost all media houses and platforms speaking same language of peace, but no action. For how long will the talking continue? Prince Bile is writing from Germany. He says, Dr. Nick said Cardinal Tumi died with the AGC. Okay, let's assume that he died with it. Was he buried with the memorandum he brought up? Where is his followers? Are those who worked with him? Okay, those are the questions I've also asked on this platform. Mr. Liu and the panelists, everyone must not come under one umbrella. How many parties do exist in Cameroon? Do they have the same ideology on surviving Cameroon? If we look at this divergence, we can't blame the issue of division. Yaya Osmanu from Yaoundé says, hello, good evening. If we claimed that Cardinal Tumi died with the AGC, was he alone in that party? That is exactly the question. Where are the rest of them? Greetings, Mr. Liu, Dr. Nick. Okay, Dr. Nick has spoken. Yeah. Good evening to you in the studio. Talking of the AGC and its members, we honestly know how the Cardinal did well led his team. but his powers couldn't do all with the disunity amongst Anglophones. We simply need to unify ourselves as a people with the same historical background before tabling our plight to the government, because our infighting gives the government doubts as to who she can settle this crisis with. Terence is writing from Mutengen, and Neng from Ginicom says, I hate to hear people from time to time say that this or that person was never for separation. All the Congos and Agbobala stood behind the bill, but they marched with which read only two-state federation or outright independence could save. Okay. Mr. Leo, good evening. An Anglophone is an enemy to an Anglophone. The reason why they have diverse ideas and cannot come together to agree. They know the truth but pretend because of selfish reasons. Which Anglophone will be bold enough to lead another AGC when Kondingi? Ngala is writing from Bamenda. Now, I want to ask this question. How do we better immortalize this project that was so dear to Christian Cardinal Tumi?
Are you talking about the project of solving the Anglophone problem or the problem of the AGC?
The AGC was to solve the Anglophone problem.
So let's talk about how do we solve the Anglophone problem.
Okay.
So that, yeah, that's it. Because if the AGC, we have defined the AGC, and from an entrepreneurial point of view, I was telling you that, you know, whenever you create a company, there's the leader of the company.
The vision bearer.
The vision bearer. Just go and check our private companies that were created by some of our big Anglophone brothers and so on. When they died, the companies died. Okay, yes. When they died, the companies died. I don't want to be calling names. It's because they held a vision to themselves, and if they didn't train their children very well to take over, then the institutions collapse. Like I have the St. Louis now. If I don't train my children and my wife, if I die, that's all about St. Louis. It will collapse. So we need to understand that. So and the AGC, those people who are working in the AGC were just a contraption of some people with some, you know, just to try to cook this thing together. But the energy of the whole thing was in the Cardinal's hand. But he wrote in a book before dying what he wanted, and he has died, but his idea has not died. The ideas as are written in the AGC is to lead us to solve the Anglophone problem. So the bottom line is, what are we going to do to solve that Anglophone problem? That is, I think that's clear.
Yeah.
It's not, the AGC and what is written in that book is just it's a tool to this, and it's not the only way. There are many other ways, and when the right time comes, there will be a lot of cascading that will get things in place.
Mr. Leo, now the only way we are going to resolve the Anglophone problem would be to meet at the midpoint. On the one hand, we have those who want to go outright secession. On the other hand, we have the government that is singing the song of decentralization, which is outrightly selling the goat and holding the rope. And the only midpoint is a federation. And the debate as to what kind of federation is now what we would then be discussing at that point of view. Until we come to the realization that we must come to the midpoint, we will just be wasting our time. Because truth be told, the secession we're talking about, I don't want to discuss so much about that. And the government agenda of decentralization, which has proven to be window dressing because there's so much still revolving around Yaoundé alone. Until we get to that midpoint, which is federation, every other thing is window dressing, and we're wasting our time.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Leo and the panelists. Please, I respect the Cardinal, but my worry is, how old was Cardinal Tumi before he died? Why did he not hammer on the set problem when he was younger? Why did he wait to draw close to his grave before handing the 400-page documents to the government? Okay.
Can I just answer that before we go?
Glennis is writing from Omenda. Okay.
Yeah, let me just answer that. Glennis, I think you are too young to know who Cardinal Tumi is and what he went through, and you have not been listening to him, and you have not read his books. Cardinal Tumi, at no time in his life was he not talking about these things. He and the fund loans and so on, you know, and you need to read about his life from the time when he was in Yagua as you know, up until this time. He has never changed. It's just that when you drive a car on gear 1, sometimes you change to gear 3 and 4. You could see him, you know, with the AGC and so on. He's not coming and enforced because it was like the whole country now got burning. And then he says, okay, let us go for it and sort it out. But all his life has always been about the Anglophone problem. So if you don't know about it, go read.
Okay, good evening, Mr. Liu. It's Ryan from Bamenda. Good evening to you, Ryan. I think what we Anglophones need is a referendum. That is what will solve Anglophones' crisis. Emmanuel is writing from Bamenda. The truth is that the government can not and will never listen to or negotiate with terrorists. What is happening now in Northwest and Southwest is not the original agenda of the Anglophone crisis. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Please, your sound quality today is not the best. Let your technicians do some work. Thomas is writing from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Good evening, Mr. Leo. Carlson Binyo writing from Bafia. I'm always happy watching your programs and extremely happy when you bring our brilliant brothers to talk on topics like this. I thank you so much for your great work that you are doing. Mr. Christian of Lukmev says AGC was killed before Tumi died. The need for AGC, whatever form it may take, is the only key step towards any result-based dialogue in Cameroon. The pains and sufferings of the masses is too much to allow the game playing to continue. Thanks, Mr. Christian. Thank you too for participating. Oops. Good evening, Mr. Leonard. I'm Raphael from Bafusam. I think that the Anglophones' problems or crisis has to be solved. The Anglophones must come together and speak in one voice and tell the government and the international community what they really want, because the way I'm seeing now is problem between Anglophones and Anglophones, okay? Anglophones are fighting more amongst themselves than fighting for a problem. Hello, Mr. Leo. What is the topic you are talking about? The topic is right there in front of you. Good evening to you all at the studio. Yakubu is writing from Bafman. Good evening to you, Yakubu. The Anglophone crisis stems from and is reflected into. Okay. We're going to be moving to our second topic tonight, which has to do with is it time to start talking? Is it time for us to start talking forgiveness in Cameroon for the healing of our land? Weno, when you look at what is happening in Cameroon from across the nation, we had a memorandum from the North that was also released yesterday, where they are raising their issues. You often hear about the Sardina, les anti-Sardina, all of that, and we hear so much insult, so much hate.
There's so
in
much
the nation.
bitterness in the country.
Yes,
right?
what is happening?
Is it time for us to start talking about forgiveness? It is always time to talk about forgiveness. But forgiveness is only sustainable if we acknowledge the existence of certain problems and chart ways towards resolving them. Now, I have a lot of respect for scholars. There is a book that was, if I'm not mistaken, it was published in 2009, an anthology edited by one-time Vice Chancellor of the University of Boya, Professor Cornelius Lambi. The title of the book is Cameroon, a Country at Crisis Crossroad. When we look at what was written in that book, I'm tempted to say that scholars at times are prophets. When you read the pages of that book and you see exactly what is written in the pages of that book unfolding now before us. Now, just recently, Professor Emeritus Kofele Kale released a book. The title is The Past as Prologue. I'm forgetting the latter part of the book, where they let us see things that were said, what he said at some point in time, where we were driving to, where all the signs were pointing to where we were going to be and which is where we are today. And the government paid a deaf ear. When we look at the likes of the book Cameroon, a Country at Crisis Crossroad, edited by Professor Cornelius Lambi, I think if they had listened to these scholars who diagnosed the problem, who saw what had transpired elsewhere in the world, would have been able to avert where we find ourselves right now. But we paid a deaf ear. So you have pointed a number of problems that we're currently facing in the country. And it actually points to the fact that we are still a country at crisis crossroads. We have divisions at so many levels. Today we hear the word Tontina, Sadina, Ambazonier, and all the like. And lobby groups are emerging from all across the country, even in the South region, which is the head of state's region of origin. We are beginning to see lobby groups. People are beginning to prepare Cameroon after Biya. It is time for us to start thinking of how to heal these wounds. There are deep wounds in the country right now that if they are not healed, I want to talk particularly of what is currently happening in the country. It might be a result of the divide and rule policy. I'm talking about in the Northwest and Southwest where we find ourselves. But let's not take for granted this wedge that has been driven in between Northwesterners and Southwesterners. It's not a term I like to use very often. But we cannot take for granted the division that this crisis has brought between Northwesterners and Southwesterners. I don't know how many, I don't know what proportion of these respective regions adhere to these divisions, but they have succeeded in brainwashing some elites who have transferred those things.
Yeah, that's not my objective. I really not want to be identified with issues of division. My objective in life is to preach peace. Now, when we look at the hits, if you look at within the regime,
yes,
as we speak,
yeah,
there are camps that are existing.
Correct.
In preparation for the succession of President Paul Biya.
Yes.
When you look at the church in Cameroon, do you see a united church? So much a division. His pastor is running down this one, and then when you come to the Anglophones, we are also very divided. Is there something that is principally wrong with Cameroonians?
Correct. I'm glad that you asked me this question. You know, what is the root cause of all these divisions in the country? What is the root cause of all the hate? What is the root cause of all this punching? Poverty. The lack of respect for others. This separation of the rich versus the poor. And to understand what is happening, if you and I go to the street and pick up, let's say, some 10 street kids and take them to a very good restaurant, and we divide these kids into two groups, 5 this way and 5 the other way. To these other 5, we give them a plate of rice with meat and then some drink, okay, some top and now something like that to drink, so that each of them has a full plate and so on. And then over here, the other ones we give them each, you know, their plate and whatever. And over here we provide only 2 plates for the 5 of them. What were you going to notice? Before long, those 5 will start to fight. That is what is happening in Cameroon. They will start to fight, and then the bullies among them will take the piece of meat and take the drink and so on. That is what is happening in Cameroon, where a few are seizing what belongs to everybody and then taking it au village, to themselves and to their tribes and so on. So that is what is happening. So the question, and then, so when you now hear the insults, the fighting, the hate speech and so on, they are just spears that are and arrows that are going for each other's throat. But the bottom line is, we say vivre ensemble. Yes, we want to vivre ensemble, but manger ensemble is not working. We are not eating together. We seem to be living together, but we are not eating together. So the question is, what must we do to eat together? To eat together means you have to respect everybody. There has to be love, there has to be truth, so that when you are the boss, you bring the piece of meat and put it on the table and say, this is the piece of meat, what do we do with it? And then, because the cake is not enough to go around, we now sincerely ask ourselves, how do we bake more cakes for everybody? That's the question we are not answering. We are fighting over the trees and money from the oil, but we are not developing our industries to create more wealth and more opportunities and so on. The economy is primitive, industrialization is primitive, there's no food security, the health is bad, the communication is bad. So that is the problem. And then it is made worse by bad governance and failed education. So it's really a crisis situation. So at the end of the day now, you see people going for each other's throats, but what is pushing them to go is far away and they don't know it. There's a drummer in the bush that is playing the different drums and so on. It can be, it's philosophical. It means that there are some forces that are making them fight each other. But if they don't sit down and think, they will not solve the problem. It's a problem of poverty, a problem of not getting enough for everybody. And now we have so many youths all over the whole place without jobs, and we must correct that thing, correct our educational system, so that children begin to work in a manner as to put money in their pockets, raise the middle income class, and so on. So that is the problem we've got to solve.
Mr. Elie, I want to tell one of your panelists that there has been no wedge driven by the government on anybody in the Anglophone community except some people with greed and expansionist policy of dividing Cameroon to control the resources of the Southwest. Okay, Paul is writing from Betua. Good evening to you, Paul. Good evening, sir. Yeah, it's time for us to talk peace, but it's not going to be easy because some people love bad news. Let's really preach peace. Let's love Gendia Sylvester is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening. I am Chi Emmanuel from Bamenda. The truth is that this crisis has reached the extent that even if it comes to an end now, there are guys out there who will never surrender their guns. Let's pray for God's intervention to provide an everlasting solution to this problem. If not, we are finished. I can see people with blood on their eyes. They are ready for anything. Okay, yeah, ready for anything. Mr. Leo, your second topic is far beyond this generation. How can we talk about reconciliation when we are still at war? It's just like what the civilian government is fumbling around selling tax money in the name of reconstruction. Prince Bila is writing. Okay, yes, but I think that is exactly the reason for this topic, because seemingly we think that the peace that we so desire in Cameroon is going to be implemented by angels. Nobody's ready to forgive. Yeah, we think that forgiveness is some miraculous things that should be done by others and not us. Should it not start with us? And is the problem not also because the drivers of love and peace have failed? They themselves are into revenge, into justification, into all these things.
That is why, again, we hit on the fact that there are some fundamental problems that need to be resolved. Forgiveness is not just about saying that I forgive you. It's like seeing two people who've fallen out, maybe after a quarrel or something particular has happened, and then you hear somebody who quickly says, no, I have forgiven you, but that particular thing that you did to me. Say, no, I have forgiven you, but that thing. That is where we find ourselves. Let's go back in history a little. What happened immediately after the First World War, when the Allied forces eventually won? And it became clear that they now had to settle out things at the Paris Peace Conference. And then the issue of collective security that arose after that. The question of whether it was peace before security or security before peace. We're finding ourselves in something similar to that. And because it was not properly handled, it was not long another world war broke out. So, in as much as it is important for us to forgive, it is imperative for us to resolve the root problems. Yes. It is important that we forgive, but it is imperative that we resolve the root problems. Otherwise, it will be forgiveness of the lip, while the wounds are still deep.
What are the root problems of opposition parties fighting each other? What are the root problems of the church attacking each other? What are the root problems of people within the regime fighting each other?
Well, I think I'll let Dr. Nick respond to that, because at the end of the day, it boils back down to the issue of poverty, like you rightfully said, and bad governance and everything. Because even within one church, you look at what is happening in the Cameroon Baptist Convention. Just recently, before the election of the moderator back to his office, we saw the level of bitterness, the level of bigotry. Everything is interpreted from an ethnic point of view, and even within political parties. Now, when the officials are appointed to certain positions, you hear interpretations that are given and all of that. So I'd rather let Dr. Nick respond to that question.
Yeah, if you give me the microphone, I would say that if you understand psychology and human nature, this thing boils down to human nature. The human nature is corrupt.
Okay.
Very corrupt and very wicked. That's the bottom line. And it has to do with kingdom principles. Do you believe in the kingdom of light, or you're of the kingdom of darkness? So most of these things they're forces. Either you're of the kingdom of light or the kingdom of darkness. If you are in the kingdom of darkness, you are just going to create more problems for yourself. And to fight the problems of the kingdom of darkness, you bring the philosophies and the light from the kingdom of light. That's how it works. And therefore, when you see 350 political parties in a small country of 25 million people like Cameroon, what is driving those 350 politics? It's not the love for the people. It's the love for themselves. They are creating their small businesses and calling them political parties or associations. They are looking for ways of means of how can I get something from here. Then when elections are coming, you hear about presidential majority, and so it's just people trying to look for some bread to put on their lips. They are not serious. So, and then the hate speech now, they don't sell their political programs, they don't sell their ideologies. All they do is try to show how the one is bad. You keep punching each other in the face and so on. And now the unfortunate thing is that what we are noticing in the world has crept into the church. Especially with these prosperity preachings of the church has become more about money. Pay some money and God will double it or something. God will bless you. That kind of mentality has made it in such a way that people now no longer know that you go to church to worship God and praise Him. They think that you go to church as a Njangi place where you go and you play some Njangi with God and then God blesses you or something like that. So at the end of the day, we don't understand the kingdom principles. But that said, the cardinal left me with some 6 principles. I think I've said that before and several times. 6 things that every human being must do, and we should work according to those. Number 1, that in Cameroon, it doesn't matter who you are, work, like work. And Cameroonians don't like work. 2, like work that is well done. We don't have a spirit of excellence. Number 3, be honest. Have intellectual honesty. We tell a lot of lies in Cameroon. You see the problem. And then we don't love each other. Number 4 is number 4 again. Self-discipline. You have to be you have to have discipline. Don't do the right thing because of rules and regulations. Don't do the right thing because there's a head boy or a gendarme watching over you. Do the right thing because it's right, whether someone is watching you or not. That's the mindset. And then number 5, you must pray. You must get connected with the Spirit. You must get connected with God and walk in His light. Dwell in His presence. And number 6, we must respect the environment. Go around and see how we damage the environment. See how dirty Douala is. See, just look at we throw things everywhere, urinate everywhere, all those kind of things. So it is about living a principled life. And to be able to understand God's ways and so on is because we have departed from God's ways. To understand what God's ways are, you must understand the God we are talking about. It must be the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that God, what is His nature? He is love. He is life. If you say He is love, then you should not hate. If you say it is life, then you should not kill. And we say He is truth. I hope I'm correct. He is truth. Therefore, don't tell lies. He is principle. God is principle. God doesn't change in the morning and the evening. He is principle. He walks according to principle. So respect the principles of nature. God is soul. God is spirit. And God is that wisdom, that infinite wisdom that created the world. So you must have all these things in place. But as long as, if you go look at our political parties and some of the churches that are sliding, they are all walking in the kingdom of darkness.
Okay, good evening to all in the studio, and thanks for the great work you guys are doing. Only a referendum can do the magic. Jake is right, calling from Bomen that Mr. Elie, reconciliation becomes very difficult except the government genuinely decides to put down its ego. If not, it will remain a story for the gods. Jake writing from Bomen. Now, when we talk reconciliation, why do people think that reconciliation or forgiveness is only for the government? Why do people not think that they themselves need to reconcile with themselves? We see the division almost everywhere.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be more of a top-bottom approach. It's going to be more of a top-bottom approach. We need one person who will be able to be a uniting factor. We need one person who will be able to build back that sense of nationhood in the country, which was taken away since after the fiasco of the 1972 referendum. Yes, that is when the aspect of nationhood started being threatened. Let's look. Today we try to feed it to people that aspects of federalism were against national unity, and that only a unitary state can foster national unity. And I ask the question: America, with its how many states today, are they not united? They are one of the most united and patriotic people you're going to see in the world. Touch one American anywhere in the world, and you see how America stands for him. Let's even take other people from elsewhere of different nationalities who've taken American nationality later on. Look at the protection that they receive because they bear an American passport. That one aspect which tampered with the spirit of nationhood in Cameroon was that 1972 referendum that needs to be corrected. I think that is where the problem comes from. When Cameroonians themselves feel, today we see our brothers who are feeling alienated. We don't even tolerate the aspect of dual nationality. It's against our laws and all of that.
You think the guys of the North are writing the memorandum of the Northerners because of 1972 referendum?
I think I'm talking particularly from the perspective of someone in the Northwest and Southwest.
Yeah, we're talking Cameroonians here.
But there is still an aspect of
you think that the people in Douala will say, okay, vous êtes des gens de là-bas because of 1972. The Bamoons, they have problem in the East region. Is it because of 1972?
Well, it still comes back to that. If we're to create an enabling environment which can better accommodate, because it's about creating a system that can better accommodate the factions that have emerged right now. Because truth be told, a lot of factions have emerged, a lot of cracks have emerged. Let's create an ideal situation. I like to remember what Noel Tamnjong of blessed memory said one time. I think in one of his analogies, he made mention of the fact that we can conveniently live in one house without necessarily living in the same room. When we live in the same building, people have they are in their different rooms. I have my things that I do in my room. I know the way I organize my room. You know the way you organize your room. But when we meet in the dining, we watch TV in the living room and everything. That is the concept of how the country should be. But they give us the impression that all of us must just have one hall, where we sit in that one hall and we do everything. That is the idea they're trying to push across to us.
And the sad thing is that we don't eat from the same rice bowl like the Senegalese.
Unfortunately.
When it comes to eating, the rice bowl is taken to another room.
That's the problem.
That's the problem.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Elie. Good evening, and to you all in the house. I'm enjoying the show. Good evening, Mr. Elie, and the panelists. The program is great. The volume is okay, and the panelists, especially the journalists, are doing a great job. Maxima is writing from Boya. Good evening, Mr. Elie, and to all the panelists. Dr. Nick is always on point, giving us hope. Mr. Elie, thank you for the wonderful topics and these wonderful panelists who are always there to give us an insight. Daisy is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Elie, and the wonderful panelists. Mr. Elie, does it mean the government is not following your programs because Dr. Nick Apostolambi volunteered just to name but a few are given perfect solutions to this Anglophone problem, and it's all falling on deaf ears? Please let this problem be resolved so that Dr. Nick can have some rest. Success is writing from Kribi. Success, good evening to you. Good evening, Mr. Elie, and the panel in the studio. The wound in Cameroon is that which entails first the forgiveness of our individual selves. If the land must be cleansed, we should soften our hearts from the hatred towards the nation. It is time we engage into the self-interest has just taken over as such that we take our fellow humans as nothing. Let's forgive ourselves and allow nature take its course, and this nation shall be healed. Divine For is writing from Boya. Mr. Elie, it's difficult for no. Any message that is pitting a community against another, please. I'm not an apostle of that. I will never entertain division, please. If you are writing anything that is tagging community against community, I won't read it. We are there to seek for solutions. You cannot be wanting to find a solution by highlighting and enforcing division amongst people. Now, when we look at the opposition parties in Cameroon, you see there are 300 of them. Yeah. If they were on this platform, we usually see them. This one is criticizing this one, insulting this one. This one is... Now, isn't it time for them, because we're talking about reconciliation? Reconciliation means that coming together. Isn't it time for them to swallow their egos and then move towards a position of dissolving around 3, 4, 5 parties?
Yeah, that's right. Now let me, I'll try to paint a certain picture, but if I forget, just remind me.
Okay.
Listen, we are going to heal this country. It's going to happen. There's going to be reconciliation. But you know that when you have a problem with your wife or someone, before you reconcile, you must talk to each other and say, look, I hurt you on this and I hurt you, and then you now it's good. You cannot just reconcile without talking. Mm-hmm. So this country, we are going to have 5 dialogues. There is one dialogue, the dialogue between the Anglophones and the government. That's the most important dialogue. After that one, you have a dialogue between the Bamilikes and the government, the dialogue between the Northerners and the government, then the dialogue between the government and the Beti people and the Douala people. Then, of course, there's one most important dialogue, the dialogue between the government and the youths, because the youths have been neglected. Another dialogue between the government and the diaspora, and these dialogues must be truthful, must be in love, down to earth, everything carte sur la table, no playing of tricks. And then at the end of the day, now, bringing everybody together to talk. So that's what we need to be able to build the atmosphere for reconciliation. Now, these 350 political parties, they will be squashed down to 3 or 5 parties. And the way to do it is not to go down to the territorial administration and strike off people's names. No. There's a mechanism for doing that. If you've played football or if you've watched football, right? And you notice that there are 22 players on the field, and the person who has the ball at any time is the one who catches the attention of the referee and the whole world. And therefore, when we come to our politics at this time, the person with the ball is the CPDM. And the way the CPDM plays the ball determines what happens in the other 350 political parties. If the CPDM is playing the ball very well, then there would be harmony in the house. If you are playing the ball in a funny way, then there will be a lot of hatred in the house. So when the CPDM is going to change their playing style, many of the parties will collapse. Because what is happening now is many political parties, you ask them what do they stand for, they don't even know. All they do is criticize the CPDM from morning to evening or try to build alliances with the CPDM, but on their own, they have nothing to show. So once the CPDM becomes very sure of itself that we don't need this thing called presidential majority because we are working like that, we are solving the problems and we are doing what is right, what is just and what is good, and we are catering after everybody, most of those houses will collapse.
Yeah, but you are looking at it from a position of squashing. Why can't the militants of this party understand that they are not helping the nation?
Yes, let me explain. Because
the nation is polarized across political lines.
All right, let me just explain. I know you have the microphone now, but let me explain this because, see, this is scientific now and technical. If you take any country and take the number of political parties they have, watch my hands, or the cameras cannot take, but if I were to stretch my hands like this, you have my right hand and you have my left hand, the fingertips. So the way political parties are arranged in any country, they are spread from the left to the right. And everybody, whether they are 1,000 or 350, they are all enclosed there. Nobody goes beyond. And therefore, when you come to a country like Cameroon, I've forgotten the term, you've heard of the terms far left and far right, right? Mm-hmm. The two political parties that are far left and far right are, one of them is conservative and one of them is radical. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I've forgotten what left means. But let's just take it. If I make a mistake, please forgive me. But if I ask you what are the two political parties that occupy this position, even if I woke you from sleep, you will know that one is the SDF. Though the SDF is, we are not beginning to, but let's say the FDOs of old was on one side, and then the CPDM on the other side. And then you have somebody like Cabral Libi somewhere in the middle, and then MRC and so on. The progressives. All right? And then you have those people of the presidential majority are sandwiched between the MRC and the CPDM. And then you have those people that used to try to form some coalition with the SDF. They are sandwiched between the MRC and the SDF. You're seeing that distribution. Mm-hmm. And what you're going to do, you're going to do something so that these people, they merge towards the groups that they're affiliated with, just by changing what you do on the ground. For instance, if the CPDM begins to do things in a way that it wins the confidence of the people, so that it has more youths registering in the party, not because they are obliged to, but because they love the party, then you will realize that the CPDM doesn't need to be afraid to be begging some small parties join alliances. So we say we don't need your alliance. Just you understand, when you become bold enough to do things that I don't need your alliance, the day the CPDM shows that they don't need the alliance, many of those parties will collapse.
We must come to the realization, Mr. Leo, that first of all, we need to make concessions at certain points. We need to form coalitions. We need to come together and harmonize ideas on certain issues to make them stronger. There's a lot of bitterness amongst Cameroonians. I talked about wounds that run very deep at different levels. Just recently, we saw the image that emerged on the social media in a radio station where over arguments on Samuel Eto'o's and the like, and a panelist fought a journalist on a live program. The fought on that's how bad, that's how frustrated Cameroonians now feel. The bitterness. So I want to seize this opportunity to say we need to simmer down a little. We need to simmer down a little. We need to be able to listen to other. We don't listen to one another again. We don't listen. And even when we give a semblance of wanting to listen, it's just because we want to argue. Let's try to listen to one another and see where we can have common grounds. Let's not be too intolerant and intransigent. There is no way that we're going to be able to solve any problem without making concessions. Because if we all want to stay at our own little corners, then nobody will want to listen to another person. And that is where we find ourselves. So it translates even to the political parties that we have right now. Every now and then we hear them speak the same language, at some point talking about the need for the electoral code. I'm talking now about those in the opposition. The need for the electoral code to be revised, the need for this and that to be put in place so that we can have a more conducive and level playing ground. But when the right moment comes for elections in the country, they go in dispersed ranks. They go in dispersed ranks because everybody thinks if it is not me, then no one else. We need to let go of that mentality. It must not be me before something can work. Let's see how we can harmonize our ideas at some point in time and see the best person who can carry on that idea. Then we rally behind the person. So until we learn to make concessions, I'm afraid we're not going anywhere.
Good evening, Mr. Liu. Thanks for this program. I thank Dr. Nick for the word kingdom principle. It will help me. God bless you all in the studio. Tawen Chanji, writing from Ekondo Titi. This one says, Doctor, good evening to you. Please, more volume. I wish that the government listens to your advice on the matter of multiple dialogue. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The problem of this country is hunger, and if everyone is comfortable, today the Anglophone problem will be solved. Anglophones are hungry. Elvis Nino is writing from Yaoundé. Good evening, Mr. Liu. I'm George, writing from Boya. Doctor is not answering your question, but confusing viewers. Okay, he has answered to those who were keen and can read. Jesus always spoke in parables, now. Yeah.
No,
let me take more you answer.
Oh, yeah, please.
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Liu. The subject of your discussion is usually not visible by televiewers. Please, can you make the characters bigger? Ewane is writing from Muyuka. Okay, I hope you've gotten that worry as expressed by viewer. Elie, please, next time, make the characters bigger. I'm sure it could be very difficult for those who have very small screens now.
Yeah.
Yes, it could be very difficult. Good evening to all gentlemen in the studio, and more especially to Dr. Nick. I like his analysis. Dr. Esther is writing from Kumba. Good evening, Mr. Liu. Really glad listening to you guys. Cameroon will regain its nationhood through corrections, the errors of the past, justice and equal rights. Dr. Agbo Nduku Eret, writing from Kumba. Kwambi Luis, writing from Santa, says, good evening, sir, and all the panelists in the studio. Effective reconciliation is only possible when different parties are willing to accept their faults, take responsibility for them, and above all, take a look of the situation from the opposite angle. I hope everybody watching us from Santa is doing well. Mr. Liu, can peace be attained without the identification of the problem? Needs justice, then empathy. A.K. Gabriel writing there. Good evening, Mr. Leo. It's Valley from Limbe. Dr. Nick is a man I always follow. He's a good conscience. How can you talk about forgiveness to people with dead conscience? They are given money to educate their people, they embezzle it. Given money to sick, for the sick, they embezzle it. There are people who don't like good things and they don't want anybody to have it. Forgiveness goes with love. Love is not in the word, but it's in proven action. Okay. Good evening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Somebody just let me just say something about the subjects we are discussing and how questions are answered like this. We are 25 million of us, and people are watching us all over the world, and people have different levels of understanding. And you know, if you really want to solve problems, you must understand root causes of problems. So when a question is asked, there might somebody who is sitting there and wishing me to answer with a yes or no. No. You have to be. You say that you have wisdom when you are able to go inside the gray areas and tell how much white paint is in there and how much black paint is in there. You know, wisdom comes when you are able to go into the gray areas. When it's black and white, any Tom, Dick, and Harry can say it. But the way life functions and the human person is so complex, and things are complex, so complex that they don't exist in black and white. So it's about the ability, when I rephrase a question or something, is to help us to give it a new meaning so that we can go deep down and pick the thing from the root causes or root understanding, so that we can know how to solve it. Otherwise, you will be dealing with the leaves and branches and the problems will never be solved. I just wanted to explain this so people know.
Okay. Afanwi is writing from Boya. Good evening to you, Afanwi. We're going to be ending here, but this hatred amongst party members, you see the bitterness expressed from MRC militants towards those of PCRN. You see the bitterness from MRC towards SDF. What? All of us are Christians, eh? This person's insulting. That is, even when an Anglophone does something now, if I do something and I say anything against a separatist, an Anglophone will write a very strong article against me, and the first thing they will say is that I should die.
It's frightening.
Yes, it's really frightening, the hate we have for each other. You see where, even amongst people who are French-speaking, they hate against each other. What is missing in Cameroon when we know that we all went to church? You go to church now?
Of course I do.
In church, they teach of tolerance, forgiveness, and love, and all the good things. That's what Jesus. Why are we not practicing it? Why do the ABC syndrome? We blame every day, we accuse every day, we criticize every day. Everybody is bad except me.
I wish I could really answer that.
But don't you think there's something that is wrong? Because this is what we learn from church every day.
It comes back to the fundamental problem of the bitterness that I talked about a while ago. And of course, it can all be related back to the issue of the national cake, the bitterness that is happening. We use the analogy of the house and the fact that when it comes to the eating, some people have put the dish, the rice bowl, to themselves, and the result is the bitterness that we're seeing around.
We know that you are a militant of STF, you are a militant of PCRN or MRC, and you see the violent nature of attacks. Is it hunger?
It is really pathetic, Mr. Leo. I feel it just like you're saying it. I mean, when we read the bitterness
on social media, that is immediately somebody does something. Michelle Ndoki said, "I want to run for the position of president of CRM." You saw the bitterness.
Yes.
Why would you treat a fellow? She's not a government. She's not responsible for because we say it's hunger.
The issue of it, it's not me,
so
then
violent.
It can be no one else.
Yes.
It is so bad. It is so bad. I really wish I could be able to provide an answer to that question. Unfortunately, we are only helpless observers too.
You talk about Agbobala so well, but you see the violent attacks
that is suffering that people are.
What is
in fact, this question, if you don't understand human nature, you will not know what is going on. This is about human nature. I'm sure you have seen this video of someone talking during a graduation and describing the human nature as human beings as being divided into 3 groups: the citizens, the barbarians, and so I'm sure you've seen that video.
Yes.
Yeah. Another way to look at it is this: 75% of human beings, depending on how well educated the community is, 75% of human beings have small minds, and then about 25% have simple minds, and then only 5% have creative minds, are thinkers. That's the proportion. And small minds are people who discuss what did they discuss? They discuss other people.
Other people.
Yeah, small minds. So imagine a population where 75% are discussing other people, and this 75% are in all organizations. They are in parties, they are in the church, they are in the marketplace, they are in schools, and so on. So it is the small mind. They're on social media. It's the small minds that dominate and make so much noise. Then you have the simple minds. The simple minds, they talk about events. You know, Paul Biya has taken a flight and he has gone. Paul Biya has come back. You know, they stay at events. But the critical mind, they think, the critical mind, the 5%, Paul Biya took the plane and went out. True. What did he go to do? What did he bring out? How can I help? Are you getting me? Yeah. So that is it. And so we have to understand that is the setup. And to change this, we must improve on our education and begin to help people to think above the levels where they are. That said, it's very important for us to understand, you know, what is going on. Let's go back to the Bible again. Just before Jesus left, you remember his meeting with the disciples, and he was asking Peter, do you love me? You remember that, Joe? And do you know what Peter answered? Yes, Lord, I love you. And what did Christ say? Feed my sheep. And he asked again, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Lord, I do. And then Jesus says, feed my sheep. Peter, do you love me? Yes, Lord, feed my sheep. That feed my sheep is an expression which stands for a lot. Meet their needs, meet their spiritual needs, meet their physical food needs, meet their needs for love and so on. You know those needs that are in the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You know, food, air. So, you know, pay attention to their physical comfort, pay attention to their spiritual comfort and so on. It is that lack of food in Cameroon that's causing the problem.
Mr. Leo, before we go, because I heard you talking about the fact that we're rounding off, I think there's another problem that is brewing. And if care is not taken, we're soon going to be seeing what's happening in Nigeria, happening in Cameroon, in the northwest region. Just recently, we saw the people of Ndu, the women who marched to the divisional officer, Adamu Shwaibu, with the problem. It is not happening only in Ndu. In Boom, in villages around that is Subom and all the like, even in the parts of Boyo division, you're going to hear this same problem that comes up every now and then. And it's rather unfortunate that the government is paying a deaf ear and a blind eye to what is happening there. What is that problem? Communities around there have been tagged Amazonians. Now, we have heterogeneous communities there with Fulanis who settle around those areas who are predominantly cattle rearers. As it stands now, there are Fulanis there who are armed and who are now in conflict with the indigenes of those areas. And unfortunately, the administration, the DOs around those areas seem to be enjoying what is happening. We have begun seeing attacks between the two communities on a low scale. We saw what the women in Du marched to the DO's office recently. It almost escalated into something else before it was addressed. I want to seize this opportunity today to say that if that problem that is beginning to brew in the northwest region, around Boyo division, around Donga Mantung, those indigenes and the Fulani communities around there is not addressed quickly, we are soon going to be seeing the problems in Nigeria happening there, because those guys are armed and the administration is enjoying the fact that these conflicts are beginning to take place between these two communities. It should be the danger should be nipped in the bud before it escalates.
We want to thank you, Dr. Nick, for coming.
Oh, thank you very much. Again, it was a great topic. Might not have answered the questions the way you would have liked me to address them, but know that in the days ahead, there's going to be peace there's going to be development in Cameroon. A lot is going to change that you've never seen before. And for the sake of the Cardinal, we are going to build a foundation in the name of the Cardinal so that we begin to preach his vision and make sure that we use that his image and that foundation to mold the nation into one lovely place. Thank you for coming, Weno.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leo, and thanks to the televiewers out there. Always a pleasure to be on this set, of course, to discuss issues of the nation. And I would leave by saying that when there is life, there is hope. We should not lose hope. We should continue to be hopeful and to be tolerant, to always seek midway and make concessions.
Okay, I want to thank you to Desmond and Elie who are producing this edition of the program, and to all of you who took time off to watch the program.
Thank you.
Stay blessed. Bye-bye.